Now live again. All right, now we're back live on Instagram. Looks like I have a steady connection now. We're gonna wait till the people who are in here actually come back in. So I'm back live on Instagram for anybody who is concerned. All right, am I back live? Instagram, can y'all hear me? I'm gonna give Instagram like 30 seconds for people to catch back up, and then we're gonna get right back into what we was talking about here. All right, are we back live? Instagram, can everybody hear me? I need some confirmation from everybody on Instagram that y'all can hear me. If y'all can hear me on Instagram, I just need confirmation from people that y'all can hear me, and I'm gonna pick up right back where I was. All right, so now, thank you everybody on Facebook and the people who went over to Facebook. All right, everybody can hear me now. We back on. All right, so y'all, I do these lives every day. I've been doing these lives every day this year, especially every single day since the COVID-19 happened, and this never happens. I had to turn off the Instagram app. I had to turn off the phone and turn it back on. This is the only time this has ever happened. I think Instagram's getting tired of me talking about these topics, or they don't want to hear it, or somebody told somebody to do something. But anyway, we back on. So let's not waste any more time. Thank you, Instagram, for the delay. All right, it only made it stronger. So now, as we were talking about, the topic here today is it is not bigger than money. What I'm explaining here is that with this whole conversation, and this happened right as soon as I used these phrases of systemic oppression, systemic racism, white this and white that a lot of people have been talking about, and NBA players saying that they don't want to play because they believe maybe they can do more if they don't play than if they do play. I'm going to explain why it is not bigger than money, and money is a very important issue. So let's get right into that. All right, point number one. I went and looked up because the whole time since this thing happened, right? We know when George Floyd passed away, people start saying, well, Kaepernick was right because he was taking a knee. And I went back and looked up what Kaepernick said. He said he was taking a knee to protest systemic oppression and bodies in the street and all the things that he said back 4 years ago. So I've been trying to find out for the last couple weeks, whenever it occurs to me again, what exactly does it mean when people say this systemic racism or systemic oppression? What exactly does it mean? I haven't really heard anybody explain it in a coherent way that made sense. But I went and looked up some articles on it, and I actually found some people with some good information where they kind of explain what it is, what it does, and how it affects people of color. And I found 5 specific things when it comes to, and I'm gonna relate all this back to the whole conversation about basketball. 5 specific things when it comes to systemic oppression / racism, whatever you want to call it. Number 1 is the wealth gap between white people and, let's just say, black people, black and brown people. Number 2 is mass incarceration, people getting locked up. And people being in the prison system, which stops them from doing other things in life. Number 3, lack of good jobs that pay well, that have upward mobility. Number 4, lack of good, affordable housing. And number 5, health. These are the 5 areas that I found that are most prevalently when you can look at the system. I'm not talking about the way people think or people's opinions. I'm talking about things that are systemic, where there's a system in place and there's a way that you can show that there's a huge gap between where the black and brown people are and where the white people are. And if somebody wants to call that racist, then you can, because the evidence is there, but you have to prove the causation rather than the correlation. Correlation means these 2 things exist. Causation means this thing made this thing exist. And that's a different argument, different time. But these 5 areas are absolutely true. There is a huge wealth gap. There is an incarceration gap. There is a job gap. There is a housing gap. And there is a health gap. These are all absolutely true. But let me tell you something. What is at the root of all 5 of those? This is what I was thinking about when I was reading these articles about the oppression and the gap between whites and blacks in America. The root of all 5 of these, incarceration, wealth, jobs, housing, and health, is money. Money is at the root of all of this. That is the main root of everything. Any of you know, especially those of you from New York probably definitely know this, but anybody know the story of Khalif Browder? Did y'all see that documentary on Netflix? I forget what the name of the documentary was, but I watched that documentary, that documentary on Netflix. And it was really messed up what happened to that kid, and he ended up taking his own life. But any of y'all know that story, Khalif Browder? Let me tell you very shortly, in a very long story short, what happened. Khalif Browder was a teen. He was probably like 18, 19 years old. He lived in New York. I can't remember if it was the Bronx. I think it might have been the Bronx, but it was some part of New York that he lived. He was from probably a lower middle class family. He lived with his mom and his siblings. His father wasn't a part of his life. And he basically got fingered for an armed robbery of some Mexican dude. Mexican dude didn't know who robbed him, but he saw some black kids who looked like the guy who robbed him. So he pointed this guy out, Khalif Browder. Khalif Browder gets arrested. Khalif Browder says, it wasn't me. I did not rob this guy. And it turns out, in the end, they found out that Khalif Browder did not rob this guy. But because he got locked up, he is imprisoned. And usually when you get locked up on a charge, it might be 3 weeks, a month, or whatever before you actually get to go in front of a judge. And if you don't have money to bail out of jail, you have to stay in jail until you go to court. So if you get arrested on, what's today? Today is June 14th. So let's say I got arrested today, June 14th, and I got charged with robbery. And I said I didn't do it. And they said, okay, well, getting arrested doesn't mean you did it. It means you are charged with it. But you get to get in front of a judge and speak your piece. Maybe you'll be exonerated, maybe not. But they say your court date is not till July 14th, right? So my court date is not till July 14th. I have an option, if the court so chooses, to bail myself out. I pay X amount of dollars. I can get out of jail and be free until my court date. Depending on, unless I got a crazy back criminal history, the judge might say, no, you don't get bail. You can't bail out. You got to stay in jail. But oftentimes there's a bail set. Even the officer who is getting the biggest charge for the George Floyd death, he got bail, is $1.2 million. I don't know if he has it, but he can if he wants to pay his way out of jail until he goes to court. I don't think he's getting out. I think he just stayed in jail. I don't think he bailed himself out. But the point is this: Khalif Browder, that guy in New York, his bail was $3,000. All he had to pay $3,000, and he could get out of jail and just live his normal life, go to school, do what he was doing, go to his work until his court date. His family, he and his family did not have $3,000. They tried to call his father because his father might have had the money, but his father didn't want to put the bread up for whatever reason. Y'all go watch the documentary and find that out. But anyway, since this kid didn't have $3,000 to his name, or his family didn't have it either, he could not bail himself out of jail. And by the time his family finally got the money together, his mom finally got the money together from a bunch of different people, the court had decided he could not bail out because he had a previous charge. So they told him, no, you no longer have the opportunity to bail out. Even though if he had had the money when it happened, he could have bailed himself out of jail. Now, here's the thing that happened. He goes to court, and they try to tell him, well, take a plea deal. Just plead to a lesser charge that's lesser than what we charge you with, and we'll let you go. You're just going to have that on your record. He said, I'm not pleading to a lesser charge because I didn't do it. I'm innocent. I want my slate wiped clean. And they said, okay. But when you do that, then they have another trial, and I mean, not another trial, but another hearing, and your trial just keeps getting pushed back. But since he didn't have bail money, he could not leave jail while his trial kept getting pushed back. So all this time that he's waiting for his trial to happen, in America, they say you have the right to a speedy trial. This took 3 years. This kid was in jail for 3 years, and he wasn't even found guilty of a crime. By the time he finally got out of jail, his slate was wiped clean. The court case was dropped. He did not get any charge, nothing on his record for this. He spent 3 years in Rikers Island in New York. You know why he spent 3 years in Rikers Island? Not because he got charged with a robbery, not because he actually robbed somebody, not because the criminal system is very messed up, but it wasn't the criminal system itself that caused him to be in jail for being Rikers Island for 3 years. The reason he was in Rikers Island for 3 years is because he did not have the resources to bail himself out. If he had the resource, if he had $3,000, right? Let's say he gets arrested that same night. He had $3,000, and they said, accept the plea deal. He said no. They said, okay, you got to come back to court in a month. All right, come back to court in 3 months. All right, come back to court in 3 weeks. All he would have had to do was live his life, go to school, go to work, hang with his girlfriend, hang with his boys on the block. All he had to do was show up to court every 6 months or 3 months, however long it took, and eventually his slate would have got wiped clean. But the only inconvenience he would have had to deal with was showing up to court on those days that he had to show up to court. The guy's name is Khalif Browder. If y'all don't know about this documentary, is a kid in the Bronx. He was like 19 years old. He finally got out of prison. He spent a lot of time in solitary confinement because he was kind of belligerent with the guards, and he got in fights, and people was messing with him, and the guards was kind of jerks, and he got in fights. He ended up in solitary confinement a lot of times, and that messed up his head a lot. He ended up committing suicide not long after he finally got out of the prison system, and he was found innocent. He still committed suicide. So it's not like the court. We can't say the court did it to him. The cop didn't do it to him. But the fact that he spent that time in there, and the reason why he spent time in prison is because his family did not have resources. This is what happens. For those of y'all hear about mass incarceration, the reason that occurs is because black and brown people get arrested on a small charge like this, suspected robbery. He didn't even rob nobody. He was suspected of robbery. And the dude who ended up who said he was the one that did it ended up saying it wasn't him. Imagine that. They get on a small charge, and maybe you get caught with 5 hours of weed. You go to jail for marijuana possession. But because your family's broke or your family is poor, you can't bail out of jail. So while you're waiting for that charge to come up and on trial, you either A, got to stay in jail all that time, or B, you plead to a lesser charge just so you can get out of jail. But when you plead to a lesser charge, that means you're basically telling the court, okay, I'll admit guilty to something lesser than what you charged me with, and that gets me out of jail, but that thing goes on my record. And when you get that on your record, some kind of any kind of felony or even misdemeanors on your record, you can't apply to you can't get an apartment, you can't get a job. It's hard for you to get into certain institutions. We'll just talk about those. You ain't got nowhere to live and you can't make money. All right, I think that's a pretty big enough problem, right? We ain't got to say nothing else. You can't go live nowhere and you can't make any money. That is because you didn't have any money to bail yourself out of jail on a charge that shouldn't even been charged in the first place. Somebody said about the guards. No, I don't think the guards did that. I watched the documentary. He never said that. He said that he got in fights with the guards, and the guards, like, he got beat up by guards a couple of times, but he never said anything of sexual nature happened. He got beat up and fought with inmates, but it was never anything like that. But again, watch the documentary. It's on Netflix. His name is Khalif Browder. Look it up. I think Jay-Z is the one who did that documentary. I think he executive produced it. He's not in it, but he executive produced it. The whole point that I'm making is this, and this is all is related to money. Another thing, they say, when I was reading about the systemic oppression of black and brown people in America, they say that babies who don't make it to their first birthday, they die much more often when they are black and brown, simply because they don't get the same health care that white people get. White people get better health care, so more babies last and actually make it into becoming fully grown people when they're white than when they're black and brown. Why is that? Is it because doctors are just deciding randomly to kill black and brown babies? No, it's because black and brown people are not getting the same quality of health care as white people. And why is that? Is because white people are affording and going to better doctors, better nurses, they're getting better services, they're getting better medicines than black and brown people. And why is that? It's money. Black and brown people don't have the same kind of money that the white people have. People talk about over-policing. And nowadays, a lot of people talking about the cops. All right, the cops are doing this, the cops are doing that. Listen, this is what cops do. Cops' job is to fight crime. It's to serve and protect, number one. They don't really do that. We don't see them doing that much. They do it, but it doesn't make the news. And then they fight crime, right? Police go to their job. A lot of times, do y'all see the TV show The Wire? Any of y'all saw The Wire? On The Wire, there's a whole seasons about this. They talk about this. Police basically are measured by how many crimes they're able to document and catch, how many arrests they make, how many parking tickets you write. Those things are stats for cops. Those are their stats. You know how you play basketball, your stats is like points, rebounds, assists. When you're a cop, in certain jurisdictions, certain departments, I'm not saying all cops, but in certain departments, their stat is how many people did you arrest, how many parking tickets did you write, how many people did you catch with guns, how many drug busts did you make this week. Those are the way that they get measured. And if you got more stats than the other guy, you move up, you make more money, you look like you're doing a better job. So cops, knowing this, what do? They spend their time in places where it's known that more crime is taking place, and then they try to get more stats, right? If you're a basketball player and you knew you make more money by scoring more points, what you gonna do? You're gonna try to score more points because you know that's gonna make you look good and help you eat better. And cops are doing the exact same thing. So police get sent by their departments to areas where they believe more crime is taking place, and often those are areas where there are people with less money, because when people don't have money, what do? They resort to doing crime, not because they just want to be criminals, not because black and brown people are just born criminals. It's because they don't have any money, they don't have resources, they have no other options, so they resort to crime to try to make some money. Listen, there are people who became successful who did this. Jay-Z rapped his whole first half of his rap career was talking about this. I went and sold drugs because I didn't see any other options to make money. He just happened to not get caught. He happened to not get killed, and he was lucky enough to get away with it. But there's 50 other Jay-Z's, there's 500 other Jay-Z's who could have been in rap, in business, in music, whatever, who didn't make in sports, whatever, who didn't make it because they either got murdered or they got caught and they went to prison. All right, he just happened to be a lucky one who got out. He talks about this all the time. So the cops go to those areas where the crime is taking place, where people don't have any other option but to do crime, and they arrest a bunch of people. They get that on your record. Now you can't get nowhere to live. Now you can't get a job. So imagine you go to jail for selling drugs. So let's say you did commit a crime. You sold some drugs or you robbed somebody. You go to prison for a year. You get out of prison. You're 21 years old. Now you can't apply for an apartment because you have a record of selling drugs, and you can't get a job because you got a record of selling drugs. What are you going to do? Let's say you got a kid. Your kid was born while you were in prison. What are you going to do? You can't make money. You can't get a job. So how are you going to make money? Now, maybe you could go drive Uber, or you can go and there's ways you could become an entrepreneur now, but those things are relatively new. So this whole institution of mass incarceration that we have going on in America is based on the fact that people have limited options, and then with their limited options, they make bad choices. And because of those bad choices, their options become even more limited. And now they got to make even more bad choices. And this is how people get that cycle of going back and forth, being in prison. And this is all because they don't have money. If they had more resources, if their parents had a 2-car garage, if their mom was a lawyer and their father was a doctor, and they had more opportunities, they got more connections. Their uncle knows somebody, the next door neighbor knows somebody, their dad works out with somebody at the gym who can get them a job. They got way more options. So is this a real thing? This is absolutely a real thing. This is absolutely a real thing. And all of these things that I'm bringing up, all of these things that just occur, who do they occur most to? People who don't have anything. And many times it's black and brown people. It can also be white people. I think from the things that I read, it seems like we on the point number 2 here, is not that it's racist. It's not that the system is necessarily set up against black and brown people, again, to kill babies in the healthcare system, or to stop you from getting a job, or to make sure you don't make enough money. It can be, I say a lot of it is about class. It's about how much money you got. In America, if you get a court case, whether you win that case or lose that case, often is not about whether you're innocent or guilty. It's about whether you can afford a lawyer. If you can't afford a lawyer, you might be going to jail, or you might be getting a charge on your record that's going to live with you for the rest of your life. If you can afford a lawyer, like I'm talking about a private lawyer that you write them a check and they go do what they got to do, they can get you off. All right, being a lawyer, I'm not a lawyer, but I know lawyers. And a lot of being a lawyer is not like Law and Order on TV arguing back and forth in the courtroom. A lot of it's paperwork and details. If you get a private lawyer who you pay, is a pretty good chance, unless you did something crazy, you're probably going to get off, or you're going to get a much lesser charge, and you're going to get away with a slap on the wrist. I mean, y'all see it all the time. Famous people get hit with charges and a lot of times don't go to jail. And you're like, damn, how they get off on that? And they make it seem like this is normal. No, it's not normal. It's because they got money to afford a lawyer. You can't afford a lawyer and you in there with a public defender, all right, you might be doing some time. All right, that's just what the game is. You ain't got money, that's the problem. It's a lot of this is about class. It's about how much money you got. All right, so if you're broke and poor, I don't care if you're black, white, green, whatever, when those same people, if they had economic empowerment and economic knowledge, all of these problems that befall people when it comes again to where you live. Where you live is based on how much you can afford, what you can afford. And where you live also tells you, do you have good food around you? Is there Whole Foods in your neighborhood? Will Whole Foods even deliver to where you live? All right, can you get clean water? Is the air clean there? Is there asbestos in your apartment on the walls and the paint? All of these things, are there roaches and rats in the building? All of these things that kind of add up and they trickle, it's not trickle down, but it's trickle up through the rest of your life. All of this stuff is based on how much resources you have. It's based on how much money you got. Bottom line. It is not that it's set up, all right, you're black, so we're going to make all these things happen. It doesn't happen that way. It's just that people who don't have the resources, these things keep coming. Now, that moves me to point number 3. What does all this have to do with the NBA? I'm going to tell you what it has to do with the NBA. When the NBA players say, or some players, every player didn't say this, but some players have made grumblings about sitting out, and then other people are saying, well, it's bigger than money. I've seen many retired players, not even basketball players. I've seen some football players saying, well, yeah, they should sit out. I'm like, dude, you don't even play no more, and you didn't even play in the NBA, but now you're grandstanding talking about people should sit out. When you was playing, you didn't sit out. But anyway, as I've said that too many times already. If the NBA players don't play the rest of this year, you know how much money they will lose? $1.2 billion. Not million with an M, billion with a B is in basketball. $1.2 billion loss of the players alone from their checks if they do not play any more games this year. But then players are saying, some players have said, they feel it would be a distraction if they go play in games for the entertainment of people or to help the white people who are owners to make money. They feel that would be a distraction from what's going on right now. Now think about this, what I just explained to y'all about the systems that cause people who don't have resources to end up having these troubles in their lives. Let me ask y'all a question. Is there anything a bunch of basketball players can do to fix that system over the next, what are we talking? They said they was going to start in July, August, September. Is there anything they could do to fix that system in 4 months? Because that system been going on for a long time, before any of these dudes was even in the NBA. That system been going on. That system of people who don't have resources end up this cascading negative effects that happen on their lives because they lack resources. Not because they're black or white or green or yellow, because they lack resources. Ain't nothing a bunch of basketball players going to do to fix that in 4 months. All right? Ain't no amount of kneeling, protesting, hashtagging, arguing. None of that is going to fix that system in 4 months. So I heard Dwight Howard say something. I heard Lou Williams say it would be a distraction. Apparently, I haven't heard him say it, but they say Kyrie Irving has been one of the ringleaders telling players maybe we shouldn't play because we could be out here doing things and helping people create change, whatever the hell that means. It means nothing. But this is one of the things they're talking about. The actual issue is so deep-rooted that ain't nothing you can do in 4 months is going to fix that. So when players say it'll be a distraction or we shouldn't play because we could be out here doing things, making a difference, no, you really can't make a difference in something like that. What you could do, though, what's the outcome? 8 hours a day. Let's say you had an 8-hour-a-day job. You don't go to work because you want to be out here helping create change. What exactly are they going to do? Does anybody know? What could Kyrie Irving or Lou Williams or Dwight Howard or LeBron or James Harden or Giannis or whoever, any player, what could they do all day to fix what I just explained? And somebody said, Kyrie said he'd be willing to give up everything for this cause. It sounds good. It looks good and it sounds good. I saw that too. I think that sounds great. It plays very well on social media. Do I actually believe it? No. What are they going to do? And what's the outcome that they're going to achieve? I heard Dwight Howard say something like, we shouldn't play until all of this is resolved. All right, what the hell does that mean? All right, he's going to resolve the fact that there's 40 million black men in prison. He's going to resolve that? What you going to do, Dwight? You going to resolve that? You going to resolve the fact that black and brown babies die in their first year much more than white babies? You going to resolve that, Dwight Howard? Are you going to resolve the fact that if you're broke and you get arrested on a BS charge, you end up having to take a lesser charge, and that impacts your ability to get a house, impacts your ability to get a car, impacts your ability to get a job? And what is Dwight Howard going to do? All right, somebody tell me, what is Dwight Howard going to do to fix that problem? He said we shouldn't play ball until this is resolved. All right, well then the NBA will go away because all y'all going to be dead before this is resolved. And I'm going to give y'all solutions, so I'm not giving y'all doom and gloom here. And what's the plan? What's the outcome? Who's in charge? All right, this is the same 3 questions I'm asking from the beginning. What is the plan? Nobody has a plan. All right, this is what Steven Jackson got mad at me for this morning when I said this guy doesn't have a plan. He's doing a lot of barking. He's making a lot of noise. He's bullying people on social media, but he has no plans. He just it's just a whole lot of this. Listen, what's the plan? Nobody has a plan. Does anybody have a plan that y'all have heard? I haven't heard one. Who's in charge? Who's the leader? I don't know. And what's the outcome? How will you know that the outcome has been achieved? People keep talking about we want change and we want this to happen, and I'm seeing a lot of surface level stuff. I'm hearing people saying we need to remove a statue. There's schools talking about we want to change the name of the school, change the name on a building. I heard some football players saying we don't want to have to sing this song after the games. That's all cosmetic. All right, that's like putting on makeup. All right, it's like if I get a different hat that's a different color. All right, it's change, but is it actually doing anything? If I change from a white tee to a black tee to a tank top, or I change the Jordans into some Adidas, and I change my socks from white to black, is that the change that we're after? It's technically is change, but is it actually doing anything? Is it actually producing the result? And this is the reason why I've been critical of so many people that's supposed to be leading right now, is that they're making a lot of noise and they're attacking people for saying anything that doesn't go along with what they're saying, but they have no plans, no ideas, nothing concrete. And they don't want to have an intellectual conversation about anything. They just want to make noise and attack people because they know the social media mob is going to jump on it and get behind them, but nothing comes from it. And that's the challenge that I've had this whole time. And I've been coming on here I'm telling y'all, this is the things that y'all can do individually. I can't tell the whole world what to do, but I can tell individual people who want to listen, here are the things that you can do. And then you get retired players grandstanding and the current guys saying the current guys should sacrifice when they're not sacrificing. Like, yo, you never sat out no games when you was getting paid. When you was making $10 million a year, how many games you sit out voluntarily to get your money? All this stuff looks good, it feels good, it sounds good, but is it actually producing a good result for anybody? My answer is no, it's not. And point number 4 is this. It's not a wise precedent to show people, all right, we're making all the money. Because here's the thing about the NFL and the NBA. Those two institutions have made more black people rich than any other job, career, industry in America. Nobody who's listening to me right now can name any job, any industry that's made more black people rich than the NFL and the NBA. Not even music. Because a lot of musicians, all right, they might look like they got money, but depending on how their deal is set up, they might not have money. All right, for many years, a lot of artists was employees. Musical artists, a lot of them were employees. But sports, NFL and the NBA specifically, have made more black and brown people rich than any other industry. So why would the two industries is making the most money, after I just explained to y'all that money is the root of this whole thing? So when people talk about systemic racism and systemic oppression, I can understand how they're getting there, because there are certain institutions that seems to be biased against a certain race. I don't think it's race-based. I think it's resources-based, money-based. Now, if you're black and don't have money, that don't mean it's racist. It just mean you ain't got no money and you happen to be black. And if you want to call that racism, fine. You call it whatever you want. I think it's more about class, because there are black people who have some money, who have resources. They can live in a nice place. All right, they can get the right kind of health care. They can hire a lawyer when they get a charge. They can get the kind of job they want or run the kind of business that they want to run. And they're not complaining about the wealth gap. They can run their own business. They can get the job that they want. They can set their own price. NBA players, these guys got the housing, they got the health. They aren't worried about getting a BS charge that they can't beat in court. They ain't worried about any kind of pay gap. They are not having these same problems. These problems that they claim to be complaining about, I don't think they even could explain it in anywhere close to the way that I just explained it. But they don't have this problem. So why are they? This is the part that I really don't get, is why people are preaching this victimhood of black people and they can't even explain it. I just explained it to y'all in 20 minutes better than I've heard any athlete explain anything in the last 3 weeks. I haven't heard any of them explain. I heard them say a lot of stuff that sounds good, but ain't made any sense. So the precedent of let's sit out and lose out on our $1.2 billion because it's bigger than money. No, it's not bigger than money. See, the people in the hood, listen, check this out. The kid who died in Atlanta this past weekend, he wrestled the gun away from the cops, ran away, pointed the gun back at the cops, the taser back at the cops. They shot him. I don't know where he was from. And George Floyd, I don't know that much about his background. There's plenty of articles out there that y'all can read. When you see people in the streets and protesting and getting angry and just upset and they feel like they don't have a way out, is because they don't have resources. It's not because they're black. People think the reason why this all is happening is because they're black. No, it's not because they're black. It's because they don't have resources. But because we're black sounds more fun. It sounds more exciting. Somebody said, I just learned it though. No, I didn't just learn it. I've been doing this since 2005, dude. I'm not new. What I'm saying, again, the point that I'm making here is when you don't have resources, you're going to feel like you don't have opportunity. And you're going to feel like your back is against the wall. And this is how people are lashing out. I said this the Monday after Memorial Day, after the George Floyd thing had initially went viral. So when players say we're going to sacrifice because it's bigger than money, it's absolutely not. What they need to do is what I heard Austin Rivers said this. He said, what we need to do is play, get our bag, get our check, and then we can use our resources to help people out. The biggest problem is a lack of resources. It is not the cops. It is not systemic, whatever you want to call it. It is a lack of resources. When you have the resources, you are not worried about a job. You're not worried about the cops. You know, even if the cops arrest you and try to get you on some BS, you know you can call your lawyer and you'll be good. You're not worried about if you can get the right kind of housing. You're not worried about if you can get the right kind of health care from a doctor. You're not worried about any of these things when you have resources. The only people talking about is bigger than money is people who already got their money. All right. It ain't any of you ever not had money and you said, man, it's bigger than money. All right. You wouldn't say that about nothing when you ain't got no money. See, it's only when you got money that everything is, then you could say, oh, well, this is bigger than money. It's bigger than money. There's a bunch of retired players talking about it's bigger than money. Well, it wasn't bigger than money when you was getting paid. It wasn't bigger than money when you was negotiating for that contract. All that being said, I'm going to recap what I just said, and I'm going to take questions. I see we have some questions come in. So the topic here is why it is not bigger than money. Absolutely is about money. I looked up the systemic whole thing. The common traits that I have found in looking at this, the same things I'm seeing over and over again. Incarceration, jobs, wealth, housing, and health. These are the 5 areas that it seems like there's a big gap between black and brown people and white people. And they are all based on money. Please go watch the Khalif Browder documentary on Netflix and y'all can see a real life example of this happening to somebody. He didn't have enough money to bail himself out of jail on a charge that he was not guilty of. Because he didn't have money, he spent 3 years on Rikers Island when he was 16 years old. Got out of Rikers Island at 19. It had destroyed his head so much he committed suicide at age 19. And he was not guilty. He wasn't guilty. He was not guilty. He ended up killing himself because of that. The fact that the system is set up in such a way that if you're broke, you can't bail yourself out of jail. You got to stay in jail even on a charge that you didn't commit. Number 2, the whole thing is classes. Not racist, it's classes. If you are broke, These are the kind of things that the system is set up to do to you. If you have resources, none of these things is a problem for you. It's only the people who have no resources end up with these problems. So point number 3, when it comes to the NBA, players are saying it's bigger than money. Let's do something else. All right, what are we gonna do? What's the plan? Who's in charge? What's the outcome? If somebody has answers to any of those 3 questions, please get in touch with me. Send me a DM, send me an email, call me if you got my number. Number 4, it's not a wise precedent to sacrifice making money to protest the very conditions that are based on money. All right, the whole thing is based on money. All right, it's not based on, it's not about your race. The cops don't come attack you because you're black. They come attack you because the system is set up. The department says, go to where the crime is. The crime has historically been in black and brown neighborhoods because black and brown people didn't have the money at first when black and brown people first got free. That's when they set up the drug things, the mass incarceration. That is systemic. That's the one area that I say, yes, it's systemic. It started out to attack black people, and it is still doing the same thing. That's the thing. If you want to make a plan and you want to attack one thing, that's the area that will trickle up to everybody in the black and brown community. Because then we have our families again. You have more black men home with their kids, and that would change a whole lot of things that would trickle up. So if you want to say something systemic, is the prison industrial complex. There's a book by Michelle Alexander. The author's name is Michelle Alexander. It is called The New Jim Crow. That book came out about 7 years ago. If you have never heard of it, I just put it in your mind. Go get that book off Amazon, get it from the library, go read it. It is called The New Jim Crow by Michelle Alexander. That book will tell you something systemic that is based on race. That's the one thing that I agree with when people say systemic racism, but nobody's protesting that. Y'all hear, nobody's talking about the prison system. Everybody's talking about the cops and Donald Trump and white people this, white people that. That's not the system. The system is the prison system. If you want to talk about a system, that's the one that I say absolutely, without a shadow of a doubt, we can say that's based on race, and there are ways that can be fixed. If anybody wants to talk about that. But the funny thing is, it actually is not funny. It's actually disappointing. Nobody seems to be talking about that because it's not sexy enough. And also, I think a lot of your leaders on social media are just not educated enough to even understand it, let alone talk about it. All that being said, let's take some questions. All right. So again, Instagram wasn't trying to let me be great on this live here today, but that's all right. We survived it. We here. We ain't victims. We make it happen anyway. Again, that kid is called Khalif Browder. That's on Netflix, so everybody go look that up. You can even read about it. I'm sure there are plenty of articles about his whole story because he ended up committing suicide, and it became a lot of people were talking about that. Zayn said, not enough time to promote the change. Well, what is the change? Zayn, you said the change. I need you to give some flesh to that. The change. See, this is where not you, it's not personal against you, but I'm hearing a lot of people say things like that. We want change. Change of what? What exactly do you want? Because then how you gonna know when to stop? Because if we're gonna protest until change happens, but nobody knows what the change is, that means you're gonna be protesting forever. You signed up for a lifelong job. Money said they can fund black students to get an education and have higher positions in America. That's one thing you could do, but that's kind of in the middle of the ladder. I think if people want to focus on one thing, it should be the systemic court system and the prison system in America, where people are getting charged, and you're seeing they trying to fix these marijuana laws. I didn't know people actually got charges for having marijuana, like marijuana possession, not marijuana selling, but just having it. Like you just bought some weed or something. The other day I was walking, as a matter of fact, 2 days ago. I seen this black dude. He was like 10 feet behind me. He called out to me. He said, yo, I'm not from here. You know where I can get an eighth? I said, a what? He said an eighth. I'm not from around here. I guess he assumed that I either smoked weed or I knew who did or I knew who sold it. I told him I did not know, and I didn't know. And if I did, I wouldn't post it on my Instagram story, on my Instagram live right now and tell you about it. Somebody says, Hoop Loud says, not about race, but their race does help some more than others in absence of money. We understand you're about self-empowerment, but it may be more complex than just money. Of course, well, every issue is more complex than just money. I mean, every issue is more complex than that. And when it comes to other things, let me see what else you said. Their race does help some more than others in absence of money. Yeah, I just talked about that the other day. I just did a live 2 days ago. I don't think you were here, where I said, here's how you combat white privilege if you're black. If you didn't see that, I posted it on I posted the IGTV, Hoop Loudy. So watch that video when you're done with this one. How to combat white privilege if you're black. I am not denying that white privilege exists, but I'm also not using white privilege as an excuse since I'm not white. And I tell you how to do that. So that self-empowerment angle, that's what I'm talking about. Hamzat, racism is definitely a thing too. I never said that it wasn't. But the thing is, you can't control how somebody else feels. Racism is a feeling, it's a thought, right? It's something that's in somebody's head. I did a master class. Let me find that episode. I did a master class of my own show. All right, if y'all didn't know, I got a show called Work on Your Game. It comes out every single day, and it is all about you empowering yourself from the inside out. And I'm gonna make sure I pull up this episode so I could tell y'all when I talked about this. And this is way before George Floyd, by the way. Masterclass number 1378. Today we on 14 something. So this is almost 3 months ago. Here's the topic. I'm gonna show y'all the phone so y'all can see it. Racism is legal. Masterclass number 1378. Racism is legal. Y'all see that? Right there in the blue. Racism is legal. I talked about this 3 months ago. This is way before George Floyd, before the protests, everything. I said that not because I believe that racism is a good thing, but that people need to stop complaining about it as if you are pointing out a crime. All right, racism is not a crime, people. If somebody wants to be racist, they can be racist. It's their right to be racist. It's just the way somebody thinks. Is if somebody wants to be sexist, somebody wants to be homophobic, if you want to be anti-Semitic, if you want to be a certain way and that's just how you feel, that's just how you feel. We can't police that. You can't police feelings. So I ain't said all that stuff is okay temporarily, but not going to change the way people think in the long term. America's been for whites and it's staying for whites. Yeah, I said that 2 days ago. I think you've been on my lives. You heard me say that. I've said that at least 20 times over the last 2 weeks. And you can't change the way people think. That's the challenge. All right, if people think that the change that you're after is changing the way people think, all right, you better get yourself a Snickers because you ain't going anywhere for a while. You cannot make people think what you want them to think. Ali says, what do you think, LeBron? You and LeBron differ in that you are of the opinion you control your own destiny, whereas LeBron is promoting the victim mentality. I don't know where LeBron and I differ because I've never had a conversation with LeBron James. The only time I hear LeBron talk is when he's posting on social media. He has like millions of followers, hundreds of millions of followers maybe. So I'm not sure if here's my proposal. If I was to talk to LeBron one-on-one, no cameras, I think I may hear different things than what I see on social media. That's just what I think. I suspect that. I think some people have to present themselves a certain way in the public. I'm not saying that he is. That's my suspicion. I may be wrong. I think, and I said this when I talked about when I did the one on not being victims, there's no way LeBron could have become as successful as he is if he saw himself as a victim. Yet, he talks about things that happen as if he believes he's a victim, which makes no sense. It's incongruent. He, as successful as he is, he could not have seen himself as a victim to get there. Yet, he seems to promote the victim mentality. And I think, and I said this in my live, I said this a week ago, in case anybody thinks I'm just making this up, I think that he believes the majority of his audience would rather feel like victims than be told, hey, stop whining, stop complaining, and take care of your own business. That's the kind of things that I say. But if you promote people feeling like victims, then they don't have to be responsible and they can just listen to what you say, and it's much easier. It's hard when you look people in the face and tell them, stop complaining, stop whining, and take control of your destiny. All right, that's work, that's effort. Taking control of your destiny is hard work. It's not easy. It sounds good, but it's not easy. Telling people that you're a victim because you're black is easy. If I just wanted to tell y'all victims because you're black, it'd be 2,000 people in this live right now instead of 20. That's just a fact. It's not a fact. It's the truth. All right, Coach Kev says, Dre, you should be the one to stand up and make a change. You can create a good idea and back it up with action you need to accomplish the goals. Well, I'm doing my part. As I just explained, Kev, people don't want to hear this. The stuff that I'm saying, most people don't want to hear this. All right, I'm telling y'all, this is straight up. Most people do not want to be told that you have to put in effort and challenge yourself and work hard to achieve success. Listen, my brand is called Work on Your Game. This word right here, forget the rest of it. This word right here is going to turn off 95% of the public. This word right here, just this one word. Everybody don't want to do this. All right, this takes time, this takes energy, and it ain't for everybody. I understood that when I started. But I appreciate the idea, Coach Kev. You got the right idea. I've been doing, as I said to Steven Jackson when I replied to him in my DM earlier today, I've been doing this. All right, you just showed up 2 weeks ago. Like, you ain't qualified to tell me anything. All right. ASAP J Dub says, speaking major facts, appreciate that. Fritz says, so did George Floyd need resources for his treatment from police? No, of course. we don't know all the facts in the George Floyd thing. There's an article that I saved today, as a matter of fact. I didn't read it yet. It's about 30 minutes long, but I didn't read it yet. But somebody made a very compelling case for why the cops are not going to get convicted in the George Floyd case. I didn't read the article yet, but once I read it, I'll share it on social media. But as far as what you're saying, I don't know. I guess you're trying to be snarky, but you're going to have to go to a different room with that. As far as George Floyd, again, I don't know any of the details of what exactly his life was like up to the point of him losing his life at the hands of those cops. But I do know that he had been in prison, 7, 8, 9, 10 times, probably because, going back to my point, he didn't have the resources to have other options. So he ended up doing what he had to do, ended up in the prison system, and then that lowered the quality of his life and it lowered his options, which led him to a certain confluence of events, which led to what happened to him. That kind of stuff doesn't happen. You don't see that happening to some rich black dude, do you? So Fritz Grits, to answer your question, now that I took a second to marinate on it, there's your answer. Had he had more resources, he would not have ended up in the situation that he was in. I'm not saying that particular day or at that store. I'm saying the confluence of events that led to him being where he was. Do y'all even know why he lived in Minnesota when he was from Houston? How a black dude from the 3rd Ward in Houston ended up living in Minnesota? Do y'all know how that happened? If you haven't read the articles, then you don't know how that happened. Go read the articles. All right, don't just read Instagram captions. Read the articles. The information is out there. I read the articles. I'm not going to fill y'all in. I'm going to tell y'all to go read them. Y'all know how he ended up in Minnesota. Go find out why he lived in Minnesota when he's from the 3rd Ward of Houston. Had he had more resources in his life, that whole situation could not have occurred the way that it occurred. So actually, to answer your question, yes. ASAP said it really is a problem of resources. It absolutely is. Hoop Loudy says not as binary as money, even though money is a variable. I wish we were old teammates. I'll call you up and have a real conversation about this topic. I respect your vantage point. Well, what you should do is do your live or your video and you talk about it from your perspective. That's what I think you should do. We all got our own platforms to talk about it. I'm not saying it is as binary as money. Obviously, there are other factors that go into it, but we can't discuss every single factor. This be a 1,000-hour conversation. But this is a topic that people can understand. It's bite-sized enough that people can get it. And when people get their resources right, a lot of these systemic issues disappear. Listen, I'm black. I don't fear for my life when I go outside. I'm not worried when I see a cop. I'm not concerned about a white person holding me down in my career. I don't have kids, but if I have a kid, I'm not going to be concerned about the kid dying in its first year because of bad health care. They might die, but they're going to be because of bad health care. Why is that? Because I'm going to have resources in place to do what I need to do for myself. I'm not saying that to talk down on anybody who doesn't. What I'm saying is, and also the reason why I'm not concerned about cops, I can walk outside right now and see 5 cops standing outside my building. I won't be worried at all. Why? Because I know the neighborhood that I live in, and they know the neighborhood that I'm in, that kind of stuff doesn't happen here. Y'all ever see a rich black person getting killed by the cops? You ever see that? Y'all notice how every person who gets killed by a cop seems to be underprivileged, lower middle class, trying to get their life together. Maybe they had some prison problems. Maybe they had some drug issues. Y'all notice how that's a common theme with these people? Unless it's a kid. When it's an adult, it's usually somebody who's trying to get their life together. They've had some problems in life. It usually happens to people in lower classes. Why is that? Because the police are very active, looking for trouble, looking for where the problem is, looking for the crime to fight in the areas where those people are most prevalent. All right, it ain't cops riding around my neighborhood looking for some crime to fight. All right, they're not rolling around here. They roll around to go get some Starbucks and some donuts. Say, hey, how you doing, sir? They ain't worried about nothing when they see me walking by. Even when I got on the tank top, tattoos out and everything, they don't see me as a threat because they're like, all right, he live in this neighborhood, he ain't doing nothing. Resources. In the areas where people have resources, those kind of things don't happen. That's the point that I'm making. I think I said that. Maybe I didn't. ASAP says, yeah, well, the topic's not police brutality. Everybody knows that. I think people understand that. Somebody says, it's racist to ask someone they're able to speak English because they're brown. My boy got arrested and a correction officer kept asking his colleagues if he speaks English. I wouldn't call that racist. I would say that's just asking a question. I mean, we don't have to label things as racist or not racist. I mean, somebody just asks a question, can you speak English? I wouldn't see that as racist. Maybe it's, you might think it's ignorant for somebody to assume that maybe somebody doesn't speak English, but I wouldn't think so. If I see somebody who looks like they're not American they weren't born and raised in America. They might look like they're from a foreign country. I might just have that assumption because the last 3 people I met who looked like them didn't speak English. So it could just be my own personal experience, but I wouldn't call that racist. Zane says, USA is still the land of opportunity regardless. That's a fact. Sports lovers, even though my boy was born in America and speaks perfect English. Yeah, I get it. Fritz said, you have to include police brutality too. Isn't that fair? Isn't that why there's chaos? Fritz Grits, no. People are excited over what they deem to be the police brutality program or problem because a lot of people don't think, a lot of people don't read, and a lot of people are lazy. That's something I said on my podcast about 3 years ago. People don't think, people don't read, and people are lazy. Again, does any of you know why George Floyd, a black man from the 3rd Ward of Houston, was living in Minneapolis? Why was he living there? None of you has answered that question because y'all haven't read the articles. People don't read, people don't think, and people are lazy. All right, and reading Instagram captions and tweets is not the same as reading articles and books. And that's where the information's at. As the saying once went, you want to hide something from people, put it in a book because people don't read. So when it comes to the police brutality issue, that's the thing that gets promoted. When something happens, police brutality related, it gets promoted on the internet and in the media, and people make a big deal out of it. But the biggest problem for black and brown people in America is the number of black men who are imprisoned right now. That is a much bigger problem than a cop brutalizing a black person. That is an absolute fact that can be proven by statistics. It can be proven by any thinking person that you would ask the question. Now, you're not going to find a lot of thinking people in Instagram comments. So I don't know where you spend your time, Fritz Grits. But again, it's your life. You can do what you want to do with it. I can provide the information. You got to take it in. I can take you to the water. If you don't want to drink, your decision. Damien says, do you think universal basic income, like Andrew Yang's program, could help people get on their feet? I never really looked into that. I heard about it. It sounds promising. When I first heard it, I thought, cool, I'll take that check. That's the first thing I thought when I heard it. That was the first idea I had. All right, yeah, give me that check, I'll take it. But I didn't think any deeper about it. So I can't answer that question. Imana Roy says, what type of criminals get killed in prison? Why do sex offenders get targeted? I don't know shit about prison, and I ain't trying to know nothing about prison. So I can't answer that question. You're asking the wrong person. Hamzanoa says, how much is the shipping for Work on Your Game to Europe? $19. Anything international is $19, and it usually costs more than that. We could charge $30 for shipping, but we charge $19 as a baseline. Hoop Loudy says, you like the vending machine analogy out of my book, Work on Your Game. You get this at workonyourgamebook.com, by the way, for those who don't know. Workonyourgamebook.com. Coach Kev says, why is it that people don't want to put work in? They talk a big game, never will put in action. It takes effort. All right, effort is not easy. Effort ain't easy. Somebody said, is it a racial thing? I don't think so. There's lazy white people out there too. There's lazy Spanish people. There's lazy Asian people. There's lazy black people. There's lazy Europeans. There's lazy Australians. There's lazy people of every race. You might only see lazy black people because you're black, assuming that you're black. But no, it's lazy people of every race. There are idiots of every race. There are fools of every race. There's people who don't read of every race. It's just maybe what you see most often makes you think that is only one type of people, but I don't think so. Somebody asked me about Goodfellas. I don't really watch movies, so I don't really have no opinion on any movie. So I've gone through all the questions. I got any questions over here? I answered all the questions here. So the bottom line of what we're talking about here, when people talk about police brutality being an issue for black people, that's not really the issue. But you can't tell a lot of people that because they're too emotionalized over what they see on the internet and on CNN. But that's not the biggest issue. The biggest issue for black people is black men who are in prison on charges that they shouldn't be imprisoned on, and for having done things that white people do at the same rate, but the police aren't hanging around the white neighborhoods, so the white people don't get caught, therefore they don't end up with charges, therefore they don't go to jail, and therefore a lot fewer of them, or percentage-wise, are imprisoned. So when people talk about, well, police brutality and police kill black people, if you look into the stats, that doesn't happen as often as people want to make you think. But and people can tell you that. People will show you those stats if you say that to the right person. But if you put out the imprisonment stats for black people versus white people, nobody can tell you that those stats are juked or those stats are skewed or that you're reading them the wrong way. Those stats actually exist. If there is one institution, one system that is started out as race-based that is destroying the black and brown population, it is the prison system. It is no other system. It is not racism, whatever you want to call racism. It's not white privilege. It is not white guilt. It is not white people looking at you funny. It is not the police. It's not the cops. Being in prison is not the cops. It's not the cops that are getting you in prison. All right, the cops can only arrest you. The cops can't put you in prison. Prison means you got a sentence and you were found guilty and you got to do time. All the cops can do is take you to jail. All right, when you go to jail, you get your day in court and you either walk out of there or you stay in there. The cops are not the ones putting us in prison. It is the rules and the laws that are putting us in prison. So if you want to change things, those are the things that need to be changed. All right, no NBA player is going to change that in 4 years, let alone 4 months, because they don't have the tools. I don't have the tools. It's certain people who have those tools, who have the information, they can make those changes. And then that's when our local voting, when people talk about voting, it ain't about the president. It ain't about Obama and Trump and Biden. It's about your Congress people. It's about your mayors. It's about the city council. Those are the people that make the laws that end up putting people in prison. So if y'all want to get educated on something, get educated on that. As I said, said this before, I will say it again. People do not think, people do not read, and people are lazy. That's where the information is. Please go read the book. It is called The New Jim Crow by Michelle Alexander. All right, that's my required reading for everybody who wants to talk about this whole topic of the cops, George Floyd, race, systemic, whatever you want to call it. Read the book called The New Jim Crow. That book came out 7 years ago. Most people don't even know nothing about it, but they want to talk about the cops all day. And go watch the Khalif Browder documentary on Netflix. Hey, just look up his name. The documentary will come up, and you see what happens to black and brown people when they don't have money and they get into the system, even though they didn't do anything wrong. You get into the system. That boy spent 3 years in jail, and he was innocent. He ended up innocent. The charge got dropped, but he had to spend 3 years in jail because he was broke. That is the way the system destroys people. That's the part. If you want to fight something, fight that. All right? Everybody understand that? Sports Lover said, I'm obsessed with demographics. Any idea what jobs I can get with that? I don't even know what you mean. So no, I do not have any ideas. Go on Google. They'll tell you. Put that same question in Google, they'll answer it. So everybody, I do these guys every single day, 5:15 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. We had to start a little bit late today because I was doing other things. We ended up getting delayed because, I think Steven Jackson blocked my live, so I had to shut it down and start it all over. I got one more question. Somebody asked me about child sex trafficking. I haven't looked into anything about that, so I can't answer that question. So I can't answer that. You're asking the wrong person. Everybody, have a great night. Work on your game. We'll be here tomorrow. Work on your game. We out. Dre all day.